Meanwhile, the Senate Democrats continue to push forward with doing nothing. So their campaign is the same as the Biden campaign at this point, and that is do nothing until Donald Trump is out of the White House. So Amy Coney Barrett is moving forward toward a vote. Senate Judiciary Democrats say they're going to boycott today's vote on Amy Coney Barrett. They put out a statement. They say this has been a sham process from the beginning. Weird, since you all participated in the judicial confirmation hearing. They say amidst a global pandemic and ongoing election, Republicans are rushing to confirm a Supreme Court justice to take away health care from millions and execute the extreme and deeply unpopular agenda they've been unable to get through Congress. Republicans broke the promises they made and the rules they created when they blocked Merrick Garland's nomination for 8 months under President Obama. Then, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the American people should have a voice in the selection of their next Supreme Court justice. Now, Republicans have moved at breakneck speed to jam through this nominee, ignoring her troubling record and unprecedented evasions and breaking long-standing committee rules to set tomorrow's vote. Okay, nope. When the party of the president and the party of the Senate are not the same, senators rarely vote for the nominees of the president of the United States in an election year. That just does not happen all that often. By the way, I love that they are saying that Amy Coney Barrett has a troubling record. They literally caught her on nothing. They caught her out on nothing. And they say unprecedented evasions. Oh, you mean her use of the Ginsburg rule established by one Joe Biden on behalf of one Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Sure. So Democrats say that they are not going to grant this process any further legitimacy by participating in a committee markup of this nomination just 12 days before the culmination of an election that is already underway. Okay, fine, tough. Catch you later. So they are not participating in the judicial vote. Tough. Again, their whole philosophy of the judiciary is completely perverse. Erwin Chemerinsky, who is a First Amendment law professor at University of California, Berkeley, has an entire piece explaining why the left hates Amy Coney Barrett so much. He says her philosophy makes her incredibly dangerous. Why? Do we really want our rights to be determined by the understandings of centuries ago? Well, you can determine your rights at the ballot box. The fact that the Supreme Court of the United States is tasked with interpreting a document to mean what it meant, that is not a violation of rights. It is a violation of rights to have a bunch of people like Erwin Chemerinsky sitting above you and deciding for you what your rights are. Chemerinsky says originalists believe the meaning of a constitutional provision is fixed when it was adopted. It can be changed only by constitutional amendment. Yep. Under this view, the First Amendment means the same thing as it did when it was adopted in 1791. And the 14th Amendment means the same thing as when it was ratified in 1868. Yes, because that's how law works. Typically, law doesn't magically change and morph based on circumstance. The law means what it meant. If I write a letter to my wife today, it speaks of my feelings for my wife today. Right? It does not change. It does not morph. It is not poetry. Okay, when you write, that is the purpose of written language. Literally, the purpose of written language is to codify what people are thinking right then. Okay, you wouldn't read a book by Dostoevsky and then try to interpret it as a racial parable about America in 2020. Okay, because Dostoevsky wasn't writing about that. That's silly. Okay, but this is the silly constitutional perspective of the left. Chemerinsky says rights in the 21st century should not be determined by the understandings and views of centuries ago. That would lead to terrible results. The same Congress that voted to ratify the 14th Amendment, which assures equal protection of the laws, also voted to segregate the District of Columbia public schools. Following originalism would mean that Brown versus Board of Education was wrongly decided in declaring laws requiring segregation of schools unconstitutional. Okay, well, let's play that out. Let's say for a second that the court had not ruled the way that it did in Brown versus Board of Education. You know what would have happened? The Civil Rights Act of 1964. In fact, it might have happened earlier. Okay, because as Gerald Rosenberg writes in The Hollow Hope, it is very rare that the Supreme Court is a leader in any capacity. Usually they simply follow the legislature or state legislatures and they simply forecast a little bit ahead. The attempt to override the rule of law in favor of results that you want is incredibly, incredibly dangerous. But that is, of course, what Democrats want from the courts. The good news is they won't get it. So they are boycotting the Amy Coney Barrett vote. Well, tough noogies. Who cares? That doesn't matter. This thing is going through. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats have decided to block another attempt to provide relief to the American people thanks to COVID lockdowns. According to CNBC, Senate Democrats blocked Republicans' attempts to pass a $500 billion coronavirus stimulus bill on Wednesday as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin make a last-ditch push to strike a relief deal before the 2020 election. Now, Mitch McConnell has been telling Trump not to go along with those negotiations. Why? Because McConnell knows how this works. Usually what happens is that Mnuchin gets in a room with Pelosi. He immediately gives away the entire store. Trump signs off on it. And then it turns out to be difficult to wrangle the votes in the Senate for a bad deal. So instead what he's saying is, how about this? How about we pass what we want to pass since we are the party of the majority in the Senate? And then you just stand by that. and then Nancy Pelosi is the obstructionist. That is Mitch McConnell's position. It happens to be the correct position. Senate Democrats did obstruct yesterday. They once again filibustered a vote that had majority approval. The measure failed in a 51 to 44 party line vote. It required 60 votes to shut down the filibuster. The stalemate in the Senate extends months of gridlock on Capitol Hill as millions of Americans trying to afford food and housing and keep their businesses open await more federal aid during an economic crisis. Election year politics have jarred the legislative process as new COVID-19 infections reach levels unseen in weeks. Republicans in Congress argue that Democrats have reached for an expensive wish list filled with many provisions unrelated to the crisis. McConnell has said Democrats are engaging in all or nothing obstruction as they hold out for a comprehensive deal worth about $2 trillion. It's the federal government between the Federal Reserve and the money that has already been allocated by Congress. We have spent something like $6 to $7 trillion so far. Democrats want another $2 trillion. Not a narrow relief package tailored to helping people in the now. They want to bail out states for all of their bad union contracts going back years. They want a bunch of unrelated provisions stacked into a giant pork bill. Democrats, meanwhile, say that the bill is quote-unquote partisan and emaciated. The legislation before the Senate on Wednesday included funds for a second Paycheck Protection Program loan for struggling small businesses, a $300 per week supplemental unemployment insurance benefit, and liability protections for businesses, among other provisions. It didn't include another round of direct payments to people. Instead, it was designed to get businesses up and running again. Both Pelosi and Mark Meadows said they aim to have a deal in place before the end of the week. But of course, every time the White House takes a step toward the Democrats' position, they risk losing Republican support. And it is unlikely that McConnell is going to bring forth a bill that does not have at least a majority of Republicans in support of the bill. So Democrats continue to obstruct COVID relief. That is no shock. They have very little interest in the needs of the American people. This is all about electioneering at this point. Did you know that every like on this video creates one additional leftist tier? Don't ask me why. That's called science. To take advantage of this amazing opportunity, hit the like button.